This happened just a few months ago. I'm 32 now and work as a medical technician. Most of my shifts are at night, so I'm used to the quiet halls of the hospital. But lately things felt heavy. The nights dragged on, and something felt off. On my third night shift, I was in the dim hallway, machines humming around me. I was checking vitals in room 207 when the patient suddenly sat up. "I see a child wandering the halls," she said, her voice trembling. I glanced around, but the hall was empty, just like it always was at night. I laughed it off and told her it was just her imagination. Yet, her words stuck with me. As I continued my rounds, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. It felt like someone was watching me. A few hours later, while I was cleaning equipment in the storage room, I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, but nothing was there. My heart raced. Maybe I was too tired. I shook it off and got back to work, but that feeling lingered. The next shift was worse. I was pushing a cart down a long corridor when I heard soft footsteps behind me. I stopped and turned around. No one was there, just the flickering lights above me. I felt cold. The patient's words echoed in my mind. What if she was right? Later, while prepping for some x-rays, I heard a child's laughter echoing down the hall. I froze. I was sure I had locked all the doors. As the sound washed over me, I felt a mix of fear and curiosity. I decided to set down my equipment and slowly walk toward the laughter. It felt wrong, like a pull into something I shouldn't be near. When I reached the end of the hall, I spotted something small darting through the shadows. I blinked, and it was gone, just like that. Only my pounding heart and distant beeps filled the air. I convinced myself it was just my tired mind. I searched through the hospital records later that night and stumbled upon the mention of a child who went missing in that very hospital. No one knew what had happened to her. When my shift finally ended, I rushed out. The weight of uncertainty clung to me. I thought about what I had seen, the whispers, the laughter. Was there truly a child lost in the hospital? I told myself my mind just needed rest. Since then, I can't escape that laughter. Even at home, it lingers in my ears. Was it real? I still question it. Each night feels longer and each shadow grows darker. I don't think I'll ever find peace from that night. The next night came fast, as if the hours had melted into one another. My shift began like any other, but the feeling of dread was heavy in the air. I tried to keep busy, going through my routine checks with a forced calm. But during my break, I couldn't shake the thought of that missing child. I decided I needed to find out more. After grabbing an awful cup of coffee, I made my way to the records room. The hospital was almost silent, except for the occasional beeping from the monitoring equipment. A shiver ran down my spine as I searched for any file related to the child. Nothing was fully documented. Strange. The only mention was a name, Lily. As I leafed through pages, trying to piece together what had happened, I heard it again. The laughter. But this time, it was louder and seemed closer. I froze, my hands trembling on the file. The room was empty, just shelves and papers, but the laughter echoed through the silence, piercing the quiet like a dagger. I looked around, half expecting to see the child herself, but there was only the flickering fluorescent light above me. I couldn't stay in there. I closed the file and hurried back into the corridor where the sound faded. My heart was racing. I was paranoid now, but I had to know, was I losing my mind? That night I tried to stay alert. Every sound felt exaggerated. As I made my rounds, I kept hearing whispers from the shadows. I was determined to push through it. But then, my next patient, an elderly man in room 112, suddenly looked up at me with wide eyes. "She wants to play," he said, gripping my arm. "Play?" I felt a surge of panic. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see a small figure in the corner of the room. The old man's eyes seemed distant, lost somewhere between fear and something else. I had to know what he was talking about. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He shook his head, his expression more frightened than I'd ever seen. "Don't you hear her? The girl. She's always here." I stepped back, disoriented. I wanted to convince him it was nonsense, but my mind couldn't dismiss the idea. Maybe this wasn't just in my head. Maybe there really was something to the stories. As my shift dragged on, the laughter returned. This time it was mixed with cries, a soft weeping that echoed in the hallway. My pulse quickened. I wanted to find the source, to get to the bottom of this mystery, but fear rooted my feet in place. And then, just as I turned to face the corridor, the lights began to flicker violently. In that half-light, I saw it, a fleeting shadow darting past the edge. I blinked, and it vanished. My breath caught in my throat. I was teetering on the edge of something dangerous. Then everything went dark. The lights cut out entirely, plunging me into a chilling silence. I reached for my phone, illuminating the hallway with a shaky beam. That's when I saw it. Two small, glowing eyes staring back at me from the end of the corridor. I could feel my heart pounding, but I couldn't move. The small figure tilted its head, and I knew I had to decide. I could either run or I could find out what had really happened to Lily. Either way, I sensed I would never be the same again. I didn't run. Instead, I took a tentative step forward, the beam of my phone cutting through the darkness. The glowing eyes narrowed, as if sizing me up. I felt a mix of fear and something like curiosity pull me deeper. "Lily," I whispered, my voice trembling. I didn't know if I even believed it, but it felt right to say her name into the abyss. The shadow hesitated, and for a moment, everything froze. Then she darted away, vanishing around a corner. Without thinking, I rushed after her. My pulse thundered in my ears as I rounded the corridor, the sterile smell of the hospital twisting into something musty in the dark. Each step echoed, making me acutely aware of how alone I was. "Lily!" I called, desperation creeping into my tone. The halls were empty, but I felt the weight of something watching me from the shadows. I turned toward the nurse's station, hoping someone else was nearby. The monitor screens flickered with static, but there was no one at the desk, just the empty chairs and blinking lights. I shook my head, fighting back the panic rising in my throat. I needed more answers. If the old man was right about her presence, maybe I wasn't the first to notice. I darted back to the records room, hoping to find something that linked the laughter to Lily. As I sifted through the documentation, a chill wrapped around me. The laughter was louder now, filling my head like a chorus. Then, like icy fingers, a draft swept through the room, flipping pages on the desk. I grimaced, half expecting a voice to call out to me from the darkness. Then I spotted it, a file tucked away, almost hidden from view. The label read, "Patient, Dubra 1847, missing child." My hands shook as I pulled it out. Inside, there were scribbles of a case that had been barely addressed. Notes referred to strange occurrences in the hospital, whispers about sightings from staff, and then, at the bottom, a report from a doctor. Lily Anderson, age 6, disappeared without a trace. My breath caught. The report detailed a series of odd incidents around the time she went missing. A child seen in the shadows, laughter echoing through the halls late at night, and staff becoming unnerved. There was a feeling of dread in those words. The old man's comments suddenly made sense. I glanced around, suddenly feeling so vulnerable I had to leave the room. But as I reached for the doorknob, it swung open hard enough to knock me back. A nurse stood there, her expression pale and tight. She looked past me into the room, her eyes wide. "What are you doing in here?" I stood frozen, glancing back at the file. I was just, "Get away from that," she shouted, but the urgency in her voice made me freeze. Something about her tone twisted my insides. "Why? What's going on?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You don't know, do you? You shouldn't be looking for her. She's already found you." Before I could respond, the lights flickered back on fully. The laughter cut off sharply. I felt an oppressive weight in the air. My heart raced with a new panic. What had I just stumbled into? That's when I heard it again. Soft, innocent laughter echoing down the corridor, unbearably close. The laughter hung in the air, as if it had seeped from the walls around me. I straightened up quickly and took a step back from the nurse. Her eyes flickered to the door, a haunting mix of fear and reluctance washed over her face. "Listen," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "You need to leave this place. Now." But I couldn't just walk away. I needed to know more. "Why? What do you know about Lily?" "Lily is not what you think. She's not just a lost child." Her voice trembled slightly. I felt the room closing in on me. Before I could press her further, the laughter returned, louder this time, swirling around us like a taunt. The nurse stiffened, her gaze darting down the corridor from where it echoed. I felt a strong urge to run, but curiosity held me rooted in place. Is she still here?" I stammered. The nurse's face went pale as she glanced back at the records. "You shouldn't have opened that file. Now she'll want to play." "Play?" I echoed, a chill creeping into my bones. Suddenly the air shifted, the temperature plummeted. My breath came out in visible puffs. I was still caught in the moment, fighting against the instinct to flee when the lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness for what felt like days. I glanced at the nurse, who appeared more terrified than ever. "We have to go," I said. I turned to hot-foot it toward the door, but as I reached for the handle, a firm grasp held my wrist back. It was the nurse, her grip rigid. "That's not safe," she demanded, her eyes wide with panic. Before I could process her words, the lights snapped back to life. But the laughter had changed. Now it felt darker, more sinister. I stepped away from her, my thoughts racing. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice caught between a whisper and a shout. "I can't tell you. You have to leave." The nurse's voice was urgent, nearly pleading, and I took a step back. Suddenly there was a flash of movement in the corner of my vision. I turned, but nothing was there, just an empty corridor. The laughter rang out again, much closer this time. "Lily," I shouted. It felt wrong calling out her name. I should have felt fear, but I felt an odd pull, something drawing me forward. Yet, at the same time, dread crashed over me like a heavy wave. "That's it. You can't," the nurse hissed. Her grip on my wrist loosened just as I broke away. I moved toward the sound, ignoring her desperate cries behind me. Each step pushed me further down the corridor, the atmosphere thickening with tension. The floor began to feel unsteady beneath my feet, as if every part of the hospital had its own heartbeat. Then, just around the corner, I caught a glimpse of a figure. Someone small and hunched down, lurched in the shadows. My heart hammered as I ventured closer. "Lily," I whispered, my mouth dry. The figure turned its head slowly, revealing a pale face that looked both familiar and warped. Just as I was about to call out again, the laughter erupted into a high-pitched squeal, echoing off the walls and shattering my resolve. I stumbled back, my pulse pounding in my ears. Something was coming. I had to get out. But what if I couldn't? That was when I noticed the nurse behind me, her face twisted in horror as she pointed down the corridor. "Run. She's not just a child." Before I could respond, the darkness around me thickened, and everything went silent. The silence felt suffocating, almost tangible. I could hardly move, frozen in place as shadows shifted around me. The nurse's terrified face blurred in my vision, and the laughter faded into an unsettling whisper. "Why are we standing here?" I thought. I needed to get out, fast. But as the adrenaline kicked in, my legs felt like they were rooted to the floor. "Come on!" the nurse shouted, shaking me from my daze. "This way!" She grabbed my arm and pulled me down the corridor, her urgency fueling my panic. The laughter returned, now a sinister symphony of childlike glee echoing through the hallways. With every step, the sound bounced off the walls, merging with the low hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I followed, guilt bubbling up inside me. What if Lily was just a kid? What if she really needed help? But the nurse's fear was contagious, and I felt it creeping closer with each breath. "Why aren't you telling me anything?" I gasped, trying to catch up. "What's wrong with Lily? What's happening?" "She's not what she seems. We can't stay," she insisted, pulling me into an empty room. It was dark inside, the only light filtering through the small window. Shadows clung to the corners, and the air smelled stale. "Where are we?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "An old pediatric ward," she breathed, glancing around, her eyes wide. "It was shut down after what happened." "What happened?" Before she could answer, a loud bang echoed from the corridor outside. I jumped, electricity coursing through my veins. The nurse pressed her finger to her lips, signaling me to be quiet. Then another sound, soft, childish giggling. My heart raced. It seemed like it was coming closer. I was about to lose it, my mind racing with thoughts of what could be lurking out there. "What do we do?" I whispered. "Stay here and be silent," she hissed, crouching low. The laughter was now joined by rhythmic footsteps, a slow tapping that made my hair stand on end. Suddenly a shadow passed by the door and I held my breath. It stopped, just outside. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, expectant and terrified. "Lily?" a soft voice called as the footsteps resumed. The laughter crescendoed, sending chills through my spine. The nurse shook her head urgently. "That's not her. We have to move." Just as we turned to slip out of the room, something cold brushed against my arm. I jerked away, my instinct to flee kicking in. The darkness around us thickened again, blurring my vision. "Go, now!" she shouted. We sprinted down the corridor, the laughter following us like a ghost. I could hear the sound of my breathing, ragged and wild. Each step felt desperate, as if the shadows were reaching out to pull me back. Then, ahead of us, I saw a flicker of movement. It was her, a small figure with a twisted smile standing at the end of the hall. "Lily," I called out, but my voice felt heavy, stuck in my throat. The child turned, and the expression on her face chilled me more than the shadows around us. Before I could process what was happening, the lights flickered and went out again. The darkness enveloped us, thick and suffocating. I was lost, but I felt something pulling me toward her, something that told me I had to know. That's when I heard it, a whisper, barely audible but unmistakable. "Come play with me." The whisper rang in my ears, drawing me closer. I hesitated, looking back at the nurse. Her face was ghostly pale, and her eyes screamed for me to run. But all I could focus on was the flickering figure at the end of the hall. "Lily," I murmured, my voice barely escaping my throat. It felt so wrong to call out her name. Yet I was entranced. "Don't," the nurse hissed, her grip tightening around my arm. "Do not engage with her. We need to go." She pulled me back, but something inside me resisted. What if she just wanted to talk? The air felt electric, thick with anticipation. The small figure tilted her head, and the twisted smile widened. "Come play with me," she repeated sweetly. The nurse took a deep breath, her fear shifting into desperation. "If you take one more step, you don't know what will happen." I could see the way her hands shook, clenching and unclenching as if she was preparing to fight against something unseen. But before I could retreat, the lights flickered back on. The momentary illumination revealed the child fully, her dark hair hanging in tangled clumps, her eyes gleaming with something sinister. The hallway returned, dusty and dank, and I could see the peeling paint and grime, but none of that mattered. "What happened here?" I gasped. The answer felt tangible in the air, yet elusive. The laughter echoed, but now it felt like a wave of malice rather than innocence. "Lily doesn't play nice," the nurse said, backing up, her eyes darting around as if the walls themselves were closing in. "We need to go now." In an effort to think clearly, I glanced to my left, and that's when I saw them, old photographs hanging crookedly on the wall. Faded, sepia-toned images of children in hospital gowns, their faces distorted in pained expressions. I wanted to look away, but my feet felt glued to the ground. What happened to them?" I stuttered. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I felt the threads of a story begin to unravel. The nurse's gaze traced the images, terror igniting in her eyes. "They never left. They're stuck here." She turned back to me, eyes wild. "We have to find the exit." Just as she spoke, the lights cut out again, plunging us into darkness. Panic surged through me and I felt for the nurse, but she was gone. I swiveled, my heart thudding, trying to locate the hallway or the door or anything familiar. "Lily," I whispered, my voice trembling as I ventured forward into the abyss. What was I doing? But there it was again, a soft giggle right beside me. "Come play." It was like ice running through my veins. I stumbled backward, spinning around, searching the darkness for a way out. I need to find the nurse." But with every breath, the shadows seemed to tease and taunt. Then, in the faintest light, I saw another shadow moving, small and quick, almost like the flick of a tail. I took a step closer, my curiosity winning over dread. That's when I found it. A small, frayed doll sitting on the old, chipped floor. Its button eyes stared blankly at me, but it was the message scrawled in red across the wall behind it that sent a chill down my spine. "They can't play alone." I froze. That was the last thing I remember before everything went dark again. I didn't know then, but the worst was yet to come. When I came to, I was curled on the cold floor, the faint glow of emergency light stuttering to life. My head throbbed, and I felt disoriented, as if I had slipped between dreams and reality. I pushed myself up, the dust coating my palms. "Hello?" My voice echoed in the stillness. No response. The silence wrapped around me, heavy and suffocating. Where was the nurse? I blinked against the dim light, trying to remember what had just happened. The doll and the warning on the wall loomed large in my memory, but something darker beneath the surface gripped me, a shadow that kept pulling me back. Something about this place felt like a trap. I forced myself to stand, my legs shaking. The hallway was long and claustrophobic, the walls closing in with every step I took. My instincts screamed to turn back, to run, but I couldn't shake the need for answers. Why had the nurse been so afraid? I made my way down the corridor, each footfall echoing like a heartbeat. Shadows danced on the walls, and the faint sound of whispering grew louder with each step. "Come play." The voice was clearer now, floating like a wisp of fog. I reached another door, a heavy wooden thing slightly ajar. I pushed it open and the creak sent a shiver down my spine. Inside was an empty room strewn with remnants of past patients, old toys, crumpled paper, and more photographs. The walls were plastered with faded black and white images of the same children I had seen before, their faces trapped in freeze-frame sorrow. Then I noticed something strange. In one photo, a girl with dark hair and a twisted smile stared back at me. My heart raced. It was Lily. Suddenly the lights flickered again, and the temperature dropped sharply. I held my breath, glancing around. "Is anyone here?" I stammered, but the room remained still. A part of me wished to run, but another part was rooted to the spot. I stepped closer to the picture. In that moment, the whispers morphed into laughter, echoing around me. I turned, and there she was. Lily, standing just outside the door, her head tilted, her smile wider than ever. There was something almost enthralling about her presence, despite the dread pooling in my gut. "Come play with us," she sang, her voice high and sweet, like a child's but eerily distorted. I stumbled back, my mind racing. The nurse's warning flooded back into my thoughts. I took one step backwards, then another, my footing catching on something. I fell, a cascade of images eviscerating my focus. The walls seemed to close in, shadows reaching for me, tugging at my clothes, wanting me to stay. "Please, no," I gasped, pulling myself back to my feet. Before I knew it, the doorway was filled with darkness, an overwhelming force pushing me deeper into the room, as if I was being drawn into a void. I screamed, my voice cracking. Just as the shadows began to swallow me whole, I saw it, a glint of metal on the floor, half hidden beneath rubbish. I grabbed the nearest object, an old key, rusting but clear, its purpose uncertain. But in the instant I found it, the laughter ceased, replaced with a thick silence. I stood frozen, the shadows receding slightly, as if they were retreating from the key itself. Holding my breath, I rushed back towards the hallway, gripping the key tightly. But a chilling thought dawned on me. Where did this key lead, and more importantly, would I even make it out? I turned to flee, but the door slammed shut behind me. My heart slammed against my ribs as I faced the door, trapped. I glanced at the key in my hand, the rusted metal feeling both like a lifeline and a curse. The shadows shifted again, creeping back, but staying out of reach. What were they waiting for? I stepped closer to the door, desperate for a way out. I pressed my ear against the wood, straining to listen. Silence. An unsettling stillness wrapped around me, punctuated only by the soft patter of my breath. "Please, someone," I murmured. But the walls offered no comfort. Then I noticed the keyhole. An idea struck me. What if this key opened the door? I raised it trembling and fitted into the lock. I turned with all my strength, but it wouldn't budge. Panic clawed at my throat. "Come play with us!" The sound seemed to echo from all directions now, shrill and cheerful, mocking my fear. My fingers trembled against the key. I had to focus. I couldn't let them win. I yanked the key back and looked around the room again. My eyes caught the remnants of the lives once lived here, broken toys, tattered clothes, pictures never taken down from the wall. I wondered what those children had experienced. I had to uncover what had happened, not just for them, but for myself. That's when I saw it. On a shelf, nearly out of reach, was another photograph. I scrambled to climb an old, rickety cabinet to get a better look. My heart raced as I grasped the photo, holding it closer to the dull light. It was a group picture, the same twisted smiles and sorrowful eyes. But one girl stood out, not Lily, but another with a blank stare. And behind them was a figure cloaked in shadow, lurking just beyond the group. My stomach turned. It felt like something in the image was watching me, lurking in the corners, waiting. I took a step back, trying to shake off the unnerving feeling that I was being hunted. As I did, I lost my balance and fell again. My knee struck the floor hard and I gasped, the pain sharp but grounding. I looked around, feeling the weight of the shadows creeping toward me. The laughter was back, swelling until it filled my head. I blinked hard, forcing myself to focus. "What do you want?" I called into the darkness. "I'm not afraid of you." But the laughter only grew louder, a desperate crescendo that echoed off the walls. The shadows twisted, darkening the corners of the room as if they were congealing around me. I could sense movement behind me, something shifting by the door, and I glanced back, heart pounding. There, a figure, a small child, features obscured, stood by the door, watching me. Lily's laugh turned into a low hiss, whispering, "Let her in. We can play together." Every instinct in me screamed to run, but my feet felt frozen. The figure raised a hand, beckoning me closer. I wanted to retreat, but the fascination of that haunted gaze was overwhelming. I steeled myself and took a shaky step forward, ignoring the fear that thudded like a war drum in my chest. But then the key I had dropped clattered to the floor, echoing sharply in the quiet. I turned, and when I looked back up, the spot by the door was empty. Where? I felt ice slide down my spine. I was no longer alone. Suddenly, the door rattled furiously, as if something beyond wanted to get in, and I realized I had to act quickly. Another glance around the room, and there was the dark figure again, this time set amongst the shadows. Pulling myself up, I glanced at the key on the ground. Maybe it was my only hope. But then the whispers began, less playful now. They filled the room with warnings, and a chill wrapped around my throat. I had to decide, stay and confront the darkness or risk everything for a chance at escape. I lunged for the key, just as the door burst open with a blinding flash of light. The light threw me back, and I shielded my eyes instinctively. It swept across the room, illuminating the swirling shadows for a fleeting moment. But the brightness was soon swallowed by a deeper darkness. When I blinked through the glare, I found myself staring into an empty corridor. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking on the edge of fear. I stepped cautiously into the hallway, half expecting the door to slam shut behind me. But nothing happened. The space felt abandoned, every detail amplified, the scuffs on the floor, the eerie flicker of a fluorescent light overhead. I took a breath, willing my feet to move. The hospital's usual antiseptic smell was twisted now, mingling with something faintly metallic. I couldn't tell if it was real or if my mind was playing tricks. I turned to my left and noticed a door ajar at the end of the hall. It creaked slightly as I approached, a soft invitation or perhaps a warning. My instincts screamed to stay away, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I needed was just beyond it. There was a nameplate beside the door, Dr. Hartman. I didn't recognize the name, but curiosity propelled me forward. I pushed the door open. The room was dark, and my pulse quickened again as I fumbled for the light switch. The overhead light buzzed and flickered, revealing a small office cluttered with medical textbooks and dusty equipment. Papers lay strewn across the desk, handwritten notes filled with scattered thoughts and incomplete sentences. One paper caught my eye. It was a patient log with dates stretching back years. The names mentioned were unnervingly familiar, children's names. I felt cold sweat collect at my temples. Each name was paired with a case file, illnesses, tragedies. "Lily," I whispered, my heart hitting a straining thump in my chest. Had she been one of the patients? I snatched the paper up, thoughts racing as if the words themselves could reveal a truth. I flipped through the log, eyes darting over the information. They all seemed to share something in common, something dark and unexplainable. It became harder to breathe as I sensed a presence behind me. I turned slowly. The room was empty, but the air weighed heavy, thick with tension. That was when I noticed the window. If I could just see outside, maybe I could ground myself. Maybe I could escape this nightmare. As I moved closer, my reflection didn't appear in the glass. Instead, I caught a glimpse of something darker than the night. A child. The very same girl from the photograph stood outside, her blank expression solemn and still. My breath caught in my throat. "Come out and play," her voice murmured softly, though her lips didn't move. I stumbled backward, hitting the desk with a crash. Papers scattered around me. "Stay away!" I shouted, my voice cracking under pressure. I wanted to run, but fear anchored my feet in place. Just then, the overhead light flashed off. Darkness engulfed me, and I realized, silently, whatever was waiting beyond my fragile barrier of sanity was now closer than ever. I scrambled for my phone, praying the light from the screen would guide me. But it wasn't there anymore. In that suffocating blackness, no comfort awaited. I felt trapped. Then came the laughter again, tinged with something sinister. I had opened the door to whatever lay behind, and now there was no going back. The laughter echoed through the office, wrapping around me like a shroud. My heart raced as I stumbled backward, my back pressing against the cluttered desk. I could hear the faint whispers of children in the darkness, taunting me, beckoning me to join them. I fought against the urge to collapse under the weight of my fear. As my eyes adjusted to the dimness, I caught sight of a faint glimmer in the corner, something metallic. I edged closer and realized it was a small, rusted latch. With trembling fingers, I grasped it and pulled, praying for a way out. The creaking sound it made pierced the silence like a scream. Suddenly the office door slammed shut, jolting me to attention. The air grew thick with a stifling energy, and the shadows in the room seemed to form into shapes, an unfathomable presence closing in. Panic surged through me again, yet I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. I needed to break free. Let me go, I shouted into the darkness. Each beat of my heart echoed in my ears as I turned the latch, determined to push through whatever lay ahead. With all the strength I could muster, I forced the door open, and as it swung wide, I bolted into the corridor, gasping for the sweet taste of freedom. The hospital halls were eerily still, almost welcoming after the chaos in the office. I ran blindly, fueled by adrenaline. The flashing lights above danced in a haunting rhythm, casting long shadows against the walls. The laughter had faded but lingered just out of reach, lurking in corners and peeking from behind doors. Once again I found myself at the end of a hallway, the air heavy with an unsettling aura. Something drew me toward a door at the far end, its surface unmarred and stained with age. Was it the memories of the lost children? The ache of their unfulfilled stories? I knew I shouldn't, but I reached for the knob, curiosity overpowering my common sense. The door opened with surprising ease, revealing a small, dimly lit room filled with medical equipment, forgotten machines, and crumpled sheets. But it was the center of the room that captured my attention. There, on a table, lay an open box filled with old toys, broken dolls, tarnished cars, and beneath it a small plush bear. Its fur was matted and worn, but when I lifted it, a strange sense of familiarity washed over me. "Lily," I whispered, hoping that maybe, just maybe, I could connect with whatever spirit was residing here. A yearning rushed through me, a need to reach out, to understand if she was still trapped. In that moment the air shifted, and I felt the temperature drop. The laughter returned, soft yet sinister, and suddenly I knew I wasn't alone. The door slammed shut on its own, isolating me within the room. I turned to face the dark, and that was when I saw her again, the figure of a child standing in the shadows, watching. "Come play with us," she whispered, her voice echoing from every corner like a chant. I was frozen, torn between the urge to run and the yearning to resonate with that childlike spirit. "What happened to you?" I managed to croak out, seeking answers in a place filled with dread. The girl stepped closer, her features softening. "We're waiting, together," she said, and I felt something break inside me. It was a plea, a call to join those children in their endless play. I blinked, a haze clouding my vision, and I realized this was not a sanctuary. This was a trap. "No, I won't," I shouted, clutching the stuffed bear as if it would protect me from what was now closing in. With renewed determination, I pivoted, scrambling for the exit. I lunged toward the door, ramming my shoulder against it with all my might. It swung open, and I dove into the hallway, booking it away from the looming shadows. The laughter was now replaced with screams of anger and disappointment echoing through the walls. My heart pounded as I fled, careening down the corridor, desperate for escape, knowing I was being pursued, the darkness swelling behind me. I dashed past rooms and wards, and just when I thought salvation was near, I found myself face to face with a wall, a dead end. I spun around, panic rising, waiting for the shadows to devour me. Then I remembered the key. I still had it clenched in my hand, the metal strangely warm. I turned back to the wall and pressed the key into a small hidden slot just beside it, hoping against reason that it would save me. It clicked. The wall shifted slightly before sliding open, revealing what looked like an emergency exit. It lit up with a blinding glare, and I burst through, feeling the cold air hit my face like a slap. But I didn't stop to look back. I ran. My legs pumped furiously as I sprinted toward the exit, the laughter resonating behind me, taunting as if they were playing a game. The door swung shut behind me, and I collapsed on the ground outside, gasping for breath, my heart ready to break free from my chest. For weeks afterward, the memories haunted me. The laughter, the shadows, were they real? Had I escaped, or had they simply let me go? The image of Lily, her invitation still echoing in my mind, danced on the edge of my thoughts. I moved to another city, hoping for a fresh start. But sometimes when the wind howls through the night, I can still hear the distant echoes of children's laughter, and part of me wonders if Lily and the others are waiting, forever playing in a place I'll never go back to.